Welcome students. Today our topic of discussion is ephedra, morphology, anatomy and production. First we will study its systematic position. It belongs to kingdom Plantae, subkingdom Tracheobionta, vascular plants, superdivision Spermatophyta, division Gnetophyta, class Gnetopsta, order Gnetales, family Ephedraceae, genus Ephedra and common name joint fir. Its distribution. Ephedra is represented by 35 to 40 species in the world. The species are widespread and sporadic in distribution in the desert or arid regions of both eastern and western hemispheres of the world. They can grow from sea level to as many as 5,000 meters high in the Himalayan and Andes mountains in eastern hemisphere. They mainly occur in Mediterranean areas. France, Spain, Portugal, Germany, Italy, Israel, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, China and India. In Western Hemisphere, they mainly occur in 8 regions of South America, New Mexico, Arizona, California and North America. Of all the 40 species in the world, 8 species have been reported in India. These are Ephedra gerardiana, Ephedra intermedia, Ephedra major, Ephedra regilliana, Ephedra saxatilis, Ephedra pachyclada, Ephedra nebrodensis and Ephedra follata. Out of these, 7 species are confined to the Himalayan region and only 1 is found in the plains or drier parts of Rajasthan, Punjab and Haryana. Now its habit. The species of Ephedra are mostly xerophytic shrubs or woody climbers and lianas. One species grows into a small tree-like structure. For example, Ephedra triandra. The stem reaches a diameter of 30 centimeters and height of several meters. Then Ephedra gerardiana is a suffrutescent, that's herb, and Ephedra follata is a scrambling shrub and may attain a height of about 6 meters. It climbs up the neighboring trees or even walls and may even spread along the ground in the absence of any support. Ephedra compacta is compact, profusely branching type, usually up to 30 centimeters in height, rarely reaching up to 50 centimeters. Then Ephedra campylopoda has pendulous branches. Ephedra intermedia, Ephedra regilliana and Ephedra saxatilis, that are some of the Indian species, are shrubs. The common names of Ephedra. Ephedra is commonly named as joint pine or joint fir, Mormon tea or Brigham tea. In China, it is named as mohong. It's also called sea grape. Now morphology of Ephedra. Most species of Ephedra are scraggly, profusely branched shrubs. Some are vine-like, commonly climbing over vegetation. Many species spread by rhizomes from underground buds. For example, Ephedra trifurca. Some species attain tree-like habit under favorable conditions. For example, Ephedra triandra. The plants are differentiated into root, stem and leaves. Root. The root is long, branched, taproot, characteristic of xerophytes. Adventitious roots may rise in larger forms. There is no report of mycorrhiza. Now stem. Stem is woody, green, ribbed and profusely branched. It is distinctly jointed due to the appearance of nodes and internodes. The branches are also green and photosynthetic. The internodes are longitudinally ridged and the ridges on the successive internode alternate. The internodes elongate by the activity of basal meristem or an intercalary meristem present at the base of each node. Each zone dries at the end of growing season, which causes the brittleness and shedding of the branch. New axillary shoots are given off in the next season. The shoots show 2 types of branches, indeterminate and determinate. On the indeterminate branch, the leaves are in whorls of 3 or 4 at each node. The terminate branches, which are borne in the axils of some of the leaves of indeterminate branch, show opposite and decussate pairs of leaves. Now leaves. The leaves are small, scale-like, and borne in whorls or pairs at each node on the branch. The leaves are connate, that's fused at the base to form a sheath. They are green when young, but turn brown at maturity and are shed. Their reduced size may be related to the plant's need to minimize evaporative water loss in their dry environments. Each leaf has two unbranched parallel veins. The scale leaves bear a bud in their axils. These axillary buds grow into branches. Foliage leaves are absent and the scale leaves are non-photosynthetic. Thus, the function of photosynthesis is carried out by the stem. With its jointed stems and small leaves, Ephedra superficially resembles the horsetail, that's equisteum. Now stem apex. The stem apex of Ephedra has been extensively studied by Gifford and Seelinger. It shows a clear distinction between tunica and carpus pairs. However, in certain cases, the cells at the crest of the tunica divide periclinally and the difference between these layers become more prominent. Now anatomy of Ephedra. First, anatomy of root. The anatomy of root shows the usual gymnospermous structure. It consists of epiblema, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, and the diarch vascular region. The epiblema is a single layer of cells. Some cells of it elongate to form root hairs. The cortex is differentiated into outer and inner zones. The outer cortex is composed of coloncymatous cells, while inner cortex is parenchymatous. The innermost layer of cortex forms the endodermis, which is followed by thin-walled cells which forms the pericycle. Vascular system may be diarch or rarely diarch. Broad strips of phloem are present in between the arms of xylem. There are no resin canals. However, many mucilage canals are present in the cortex. Pith is small but prominent. The secondary growth in the root is normal. Now stem anatomy. Internal structure of stem of Ephedra is studied under two headings. We have primary structure and secondary structure. Primary structure. A transverse section cut through the stem of Ephedra shows a circular outline with mechanical strength to the plant. The cortex. Cortex is distinguishable into an outer zone and an inner zone. The outer zone consists of chloroenchymatous elongated palisade-like cells and are thus capable of photosynthesis. The inner cortex is represented by 2 to 3 layers of spongy parenchyma with loosely arranged spherical or oval cells that also possess chloroplasts. The chloroenchymatous cortex makes for the deficiency of leaves that are mostly scale-like. Now endodermis. The cortex is delimited by a single layer of endodermis. The pericycle is not clearly defined. Vascular region. Creason and Evert have given a very impressive account of the vasculature in the stem of Ephedra viridis. In the internode, there are 8 vascular bundles, of which 4 are leaf traces and 4 are axial bundles. All the 8 vascular bundles travel up to the next node, where 4 leaf traces depart to the leaves. During their upward course, the axial bundles fuse in pairs and then separate and again divide, forming 2 branch traces, 2 per branch. The 2 branch traces divide twice, resulting in 8 vascular bundles, a situation similar to the main axis. The 4 axial bundles on opposite sides of the node continue and enter the next internode and divide, forming 8 vascular bundles. This mode of vasculature in a decussate phyllotaxy is represented in the nodes and internodes. The vascular bundles are conjoined, collateral, and arc and open. These are arranged in a ring as in a typical dicotyledonous stem. Xylem consists of tracheids, vessels, and xylem parenchyma. The tracheids exhibit annular and spiral thickenings and bordered pits, whereas the vessels have only bordered pits. The phloem consists of sieve cells, phloem parenchyma, and albuminous cells. Broad medullary rays are present in between the vascular bundles. A parenchymatous pith with small intercellular spaces occupies the center of the stem. Its central portion may be thick-walled and taniferous. In the nodal region, the pith is composed of strongly lignified cells which form a plate-like nodal diaphragm. The stem easily breaks at the nodes due to the presence of nodal diaphragm. Now, secondary structure or secondary growth in the stem of ephedra. The secondary growth takes place in the usual way by the activity of vascular cambium. A thin strip of intrafascicular cambium present in the primary vascular bundles joins with the interfascicular cambium, which develops before the secondary growth takes place by the meristematic activity of some parenchymatous cells between the vascular bundles to form a ring of cambium. That's cambium ring. This cambial ring then cuts off secondary xylem towards the inner side and secondary phloem towards the outer side. The cambial cells are of two types, ray initials and fusiform initials. The former are responsible for cutting off xylem and phloem rays, whereas the later give rise to secondary vascular elements. The secondary xylem consists of tracheids, vessels, and scanty amount of xylem parenchyma. Xylem fibers are absent. The tracheids show a single row of bordered pits with crassulae both on radial as well as on tangential walls. The vessels originate from the pitted tracheids by the loss of closing membranes from a series of circular bordered pits located on long and sloping walls near its ends. This leads to the formation of a foraminate perforation plate. These perforation plates may be arranged in a uniserate manner or may be even irregular in arrangement. The wood or secondary xylem is ring porous or diffuse porous depending upon the species. The spring wood abounds in vessels, whereas the autumn wood has only few vessels and more tracheids. The secondary phloem consists of sieve cells, phloem parenchyma, including albuminous cells, and rays. Mature sieve elements vary in shape from extremely tapered to blunt ends. They remain thin-walled with no apparent secondary thickening. Now, periderm. The annual periderm arises in spring at the same time as the vascular cambium is reactivated. The cork cambium arises from the living parenchyma cells of the non-functional phloem or previous season's phloem and cuts off cork cells towards the outer side and secondary cortex towards the inner side. Thus, the periderm consists of cork cambium and secondary cortex, replaces all the tissues outside the secondary phloem. Now, pith. The pith becomes narrow in the stems that have undergone secondary growth and may ultimately disappear in very old stems, its place being taken by the secondary xylem. Now, leaf. All the species of ephedra have reduced and membranous scale leaves. A transverse section of the leaf reveals an oval outline. Internally, it is differentiated into epidermis, mesophyll, and vascular region. The epidermis, which is highly cuticularized, possesses very few sunken stomata. There are 2 or 3 layers of palisade cells that are oblong and chlorenchymatous and separated by intercellular spaces. They constitute the greater part of the mesophyll. The parenchyma fills up the remaining space in the leaf. The cells are devoid of chloroplast. 2 vascular bundles are present in the central parenchyma. The vascular bundles are collateral, closed, and consist of primary phloem and primary xylem. Transfusion tracheids with bordered pits and thickening bars occur occasionally on the flanks of the xylem. Now, life cycle or reproduction of ephedra. All the species of ephedra are dioecious, that is, male and female reproductive organs are born on different plants. However, monoecious species with male and female strobili on the same plant have also been reported. The histology of the flowers and strobili of ephedra species were examined by Van Teghem, Thodainbridge, and Faber-Ducart. A strobilus resembles spike type of inflorescence that consists of an axis with decussately arranged sterile scales and stamens or ovules. Unlike other gymnosperms, the strobili of ephedra are compound. That is, the cone axis bears pairs of bracts which subtend either staminate or ovulate shoots. Now, male or microsporangiate strobilus. The male strobilus arises in the axils of scale leaf present at each node of fertile branches of male plant. These arise in whorls and their number at the node depends upon the number of scale leaves. The male strobilus consists of a central axis that bears 2 to 8 pairs of opposite decussate bracts. The lower 1 to 2 pairs of these bracts are sterile, whereas the upper ones are fertile. Each of them bears a solitary microsporangiate shoot in its axil. This shoot is continued into a short axis called microsporangiophore. This microsporangiophore dehisces terminally. It bears at its base a pair of bracteoles. The microsporangiophore bearing 3 to 12 sessile bilobed microsporangia is also termed as male flower. Development of microsporangium. In the axil of each fertile bract of a male cone, a microsporangiophore, that's antherophore, arises as a protuberance. Later, the tip of the microsporangiophore becomes lobed and each lobe represents a microsporangium. The development of microsporangium is eusporangiate type, that is formed by a group of subepidermal initial cells. A group of hypodermal cells in each lobe functions as archisporal initial. These cells divide periconally and give rise to an inner primary sporogenous layer and the outer primary parietal cells. The latter divides again to form a middle layer and the tectum. The primary sporogenous cells in turn give rise to the sporogenous tissue, whose cells eventually become the microspore mother cells. Now, microsporogenesis. The microspore mother cells soon after their formation undergo meiosis to give rise to tetrads of microspores. After reduction division, all microspore mother cells, tapetal cells, disorganize. A microsporangium has 2 to 3 loculi and is often called synangium. Each locule opens through a terminal silt and microspores are set free. Female or megasporangiate strobilus. The female strobilus arises in the axil of scale leaves at each node of fertile branch of the female plant. They also arise in whorls. Rarely a single strobilus may terminate the main axis. A female cone appears to be an elongated structure with a pointed apex. It retains the same compound strobilar organization as the male strobilus and consists of a short axis to which are attached 3 to 4 pairs of decussate bracts. The lower bracts are sterile, whereas the upper two bear an ovule in their axils. One bract bears one ovule. Each ovule terminates a short stalk. The stalk and the terminal ovule are also termed as female flower. Now, megasporangium. A young ovule has a prominent nucellus protected by a double envelope. The lower half of the inner integument is fused with the nucellus while the upper half is free and is drawn out into an elongated micropylar tube. The outer integument is comparatively short and is morphologically equivalent to a fused pair of bracteoles. Development of megasporangium. A hypodermal cell of the nucellus functions as archosporial cell, which divides periclinially to produce an outer primary parietal cell and an inner megaspore mother cell. Due to the repeated periclinal divisions in parietal cells, the megaspore mother cell is pushed deep in the massive nucellar tissue. The megaspore mother cell enlarges and divides meiotically to form a linear tetrad of megaspores. Usually the lowest or calasal megaspore is functional. Now gametophytes. First, male gametophyte. The microspore is the first cell of male gametophyte. It starts developing into male gametophyte within the microsporangium. Development of male gametophyte. The microspore germinates in situ, that is within the microsporangium. It divides obliquely and transversely to form a small prothallal cell and a large central cell. The later divides again in the same fashion, forming a second prothallal cell and a large entheridial cell. The later by one more division gives rise to tube cell and an entheridial cell. The entheridial cell on the division forms a stalk cell and a spermatogenous cell. The shedding of pollen thus takes place at the 5-celled stage. That is 2 prothallals, 1 tube cell, a stalk cell and a spermatogenous cell. The pollen wall is laid down concurrent to the release of microspores, forms the tetrads. It consists of an outer axene and inner intine. Now pollination. Wind pollination is important, that's anemophily, but insect pollination, entomophily too has been reported in Ephedra aphylla and Ephedra campylopoda. Pollens are caught in the pollination drop, which is present on the micropylar tip and are sucked in the pollen chamber. Further development takes place in the pollen chamber. After pollination, the pollen grains swell in the pollination drop, resulting in the rupture of the axene, which is cast off before germination. The tube nucleus is first to move, followed by the spermatogenous cell. The later divides in the pollen tube to give rise to 2 male gametes. The gametes are non-motile. The pollen tubes grows and move towards the female gametophytes. Now female gametophyte. The megaspore is the first cell of female gametophyte. It remains embedded within the nucellus of the ovule and develops into the female gametophyte. Now development of female gametophyte. The functional megaspore enlarged considerably. Its nucleus divides mitotically without valve formation to form 2 daughter nuclei, which occupy the 2 opposite poles of the megaspore due to the development of a large central vacuole. Both the nuclei divide again and again to form as many as 256 free nuclei. These nuclei arrange themselves in a thin layer of cytoplasm around the central vacuole. After that, the central vacuole disappears and the valve formation takes place, starting from the periphery towards the center. Thus, a mass of tissue known as female gametophyte or endosperm is formed. The cellular gametophyte differentiates in 2 zones, a lower narrow calasal zone, which is the food storage tissue, and a broad upper micropylar zone, where normally 1 to 3 archegonia develop. Now archegonium. 3 or 4 cells at the micropylar end of the female gametophyte become archegonial initials and are distinguishable from the neighboring cells by their large nuclei and dense cytoplasm. These archegonial initials divide periclinally to form a small primary neck initial and a larger central cell. The former divides irregularly to form a long column of about 30 to 40 celled neck. The nucleus of central cell divides to form a ventral canal nucleus and an egg nucleus. The ventral canal nucleus may remain in the upper part or may degenerate. The egg nucleus enlarges and comes to lie in the center of the archegonial cytoplasm. The gametophytic cells surrounding the developing archegonium differentiate to form a 2 to 3 layer jacket around the venter. In the meantime, a deep pollen chamber is formed just above the female gametophyte by dissolution of nucellular tissues. Now, fertilization. Ephedra shows siphonogamous type of fertilization. The pollen tube elongates and reaches the neck cells of the mature archegonium. The tip ruptures and discharges all the 4 nuclei, tube, stalk, cell, nucleus and 2 male gametes into the archegonium. One male nuclei approaches the egg, fuses with its nucleus to form a diploid zygote. Sometimes other male nuclei fuses with the ventral canal nucleus to form a transient tissue which appears as the embryo develops. This is the second fertilization, the young sporophyte or development of embryo. Following fertilization, the zygote nucleus divides mitotically and forms 8 free nuclei. At the 8th nuclear stage, a wall develops around each nucleus, which results in 8 units, which individually behave as proembryos. Each of these proembryos may develop independently into an embryo. Formation of more than one embryo from a single zygote without any cytoplasmic cleavage is called embryo-sac polyembryony. All proembryos are not usually potential, but only 4 to 6 lower ones become functional and develop into embryos. In its development, the proembryonal cell first develops a tubular outgrowth known as suspensor tube. The nucleus may divide into 2 which descend in the suspensor tube. A transverse wall is laid down which gives rise to an embryonal cell and a suspensor cell. All the 8 proembryos in an archegonium are potentially alike, but those present at the micropylar end gradually degenerate. Eventually, however, only one embryo develops in the seed. The embryonal cell now divides transversely to form a basal embryo cell and a terminal cell. The terminal cell divides immediately in a longitudinal fashion to form 2 cells which elongate considerably to form the embryonal tubes or secondary suspensor. The embryo cell divides by 2 obliquely intersecting longitudinal walls, thereby cutting off an apical cell. The apical cell and subsequent cells undergo repeated divisions in all planes to form a massive embryo at the callosal end. More than one embryo, that's usually 6 to 12, starts developing due to the simple end cleavage polyembryony. But it is the centrally placed deep-seated one that finally matures. Now, seed. After fertilization, the ovule is transformed into seed. In the mature seed, only the compressed remains of the nucellus persist. It is followed by a massive female gametophyte, that's endosperm. The 2 subtending bracts of the megasporangate strobilus in a mature seed form the outer fleshy additional covering. Of the 2 envelopes, the outer one gives rise to the hard seed coat, the inner envelope remains papery. Now, germination of seed. The seed germinates immediately without undergoing a period of rest. The germination is apigeal. The radicle emerges out through its micropylar end and it develops into a primary root. At the same time, the hypocotyl also emerges with 2 fleshy and linear cotyledons. The medicinal value of ephedra. Ephedra has been used for its medicinal value since 5000 years. The most commonly known extract is a phenylethylamine alkaloid called ephedrine, extracted from its stem. It is used for the treatment of fever, nasal congestion, asthma and venereal diseases. It is also a good respiratory sedative and cough remedy. Recently, the drug has been marketed as an appetite suppressant, an athletic performance and energy enhancer. Excessive use of drug raises blood pressure, stressing the circulatory system and leading to more serious health problems like cardiac arrest and strokes. With this, we conclude today's topic that was about ephedra, its morphology, anatomy and reproduction, and hope you might have understood the topic well.